Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We're so glad to welcome you as part of our community tonight. Please note that this webinar is being recorded and distributed live stream. By entering this virtual meeting room, you give your consent to be recorded and distributed by Vienna Live with Simeon Moore and other third parties. If you prefer to not be recorded, please go to the LinkedIn video feed, the link to which I've just placed in the chat room. This show thrives on participant contributions, and all participants are encouraged to actively participate by asking questions and making comments. To do so, please write in the chat room or turn on your microphone and say hi. We'll be delighted to include your perspective in the conversation. Tonight, our featured guest is classical music composer and conductor Johan de Meij, whose new album, Casanova, will be the subject of tonight's conversation. Welcome, Johan.
Thank you very much for having me, Simeon.
Johan, so tell us a little bit about where you come from, how your musical tastes were formed, and why you decided to become a professional musician.
I was born and raised in the Netherlands, in Holland, and I actually had no plan to become a musician or a composer or a conductor or an arranger. That all sort of came to me. I started rather late playing trumpet in a local wind band. And then I switched to trombone and joined a youth symphony orchestra. I'm doing my life in a very nutshell because it's a long story if I do the whole one. So then came my military service. I actually was trained as a elementary school teacher, but during my military service, I was able to join a military band playing the E-flat tuba. And during that time, I won an audition in Amsterdam with the Amsterdam Police Band, again, a wind orchestra. And that's where it all started. That's where my love for the wind orchestra started. That's why I started my first arrangements and then later compositions. Until 1988, then the police band was folded because of financial reasons. And then I became a freelance player, trombone, with the Dutch orchestras and with a contemporary ensemble called De Volharding, which means the perseverance, 13 group wind players and piano, with whom I traveled the whole world and played a lot of contemporary music. And that has certainly also formed me a little bit as a composer, if you can hear it in later works, more contemporary, more minimal music and all that. So yeah, nothing was planned. I just followed my heart, and the conducting came when I was going to groups to try my first arrangement and all that. Right now, I don't play anymore, but I'm just concentrating on writing, conducting, arranging, and publishing. I publish all my own music.
So when you won that audition with the police band, you knew, okay, this is my life, or was there a moment before then when you understood, okay, that's what I've got to do with my life?
No, absolutely. This was crucial because, as I said, I was trained as elementary school teacher, and I actually didn't like the thought that, God, no, I don't want to do that the rest of my life. So, and then I was still a very enthusiastic amateur player, and then during this military service, I was playing 7 days a week. Not only on the tuba but also euphonium, tenor horn, trombone, bass trombone, whatever was necessary. It was quite a small group. And then I thought, yeah, this is going to be my life. So it was musician first, then came arranger, then came conductor, then came composer, in that order.
Let's listen to another track from the album. This is from the title, Casanova. It's the third movement, La Vita a Corte, the life at the court. Wow. Well, that's pretty exciting. Now
Yeah.
tell us about this album, Casanova. And I understand that you're famous as a composer, as you said, which came at the last step of your career, at the later stage. You're famous for tone poems. In other words, uh, describing something through music, telling some kind of stories through music. That The Lord of the Rings was your first big hit in the late 1980s. Now tell us about Casanova. Tell us about this new album.
Right, yeah. Most of my works have a so-called programmatic title. I have 5 symphonies with all of them have a name: Lord of the Rings, Big Apple, um, Planet Earth, Symphony the Leader, and Return to Middle Earth. Casanova is not a typical classical concerto with 3 movements or 4 movements. It's built up of 8 tableaus, and where we just left off is the moment where Casanova gets arrested by Messer Grande, that's the police officer of Venice, the bad guy in the story. It's very comparable to Scarpia in Tosca. And there are more hints towards Puccini, but I'll tell that later. So the movement we heard is the La Vita a Corte, where he enters the ballroom, and with big chandeliers and champagne and beautiful women and all that, very glamorous. But then the atmosphere changes, as you heard. He gets arrested and thrown in jail, where he will be for 14 or 16 months. But then he escapes through the roof together with his neighbor prisoner, Balbi, the monk. And they were able to make a hole in the roof and escape. And I think we're going to hear that part later on, that excerpt from the L'Evasione dei Piombi. He was locked up in the Piombi prison in Venice. And it's a true story. This whole thing is based on L'Histoire de ma vie, the story of my life, his biography, which is fascinating, absolutely fascinating. But the majority of my work is not about his, the womanizer and the charming guy. Only towards the end, there's a little bit of that, but it's more about his imprisonment and his escape from the Pyongyang prison. That's where the piece is about.
And can we hear that, Johan? When we're about to listen, as you said, the escape from the Pyongyang prison, what should we be listening for? Is the cello Casanova? Are the trombones the police?
Well, you'll hear just percussion in the beginning. The timpani goes, and then you hear a thunder sheet and a lion's roar, all kinds of effects. It's like film music. You hear breaking sounds, and then the cello just runs off. He goes very fast, 16th note. You can literally hear him running. So
let's have a listen.
Okay, yeah.
Wow. Well, my heart is racing. That's pretty exciting. Tell us,
Yeah, this is building and building for another 3 minutes to a huge, huge climax where he's free.
Johan, now tell us about the musicians you chose for this album. This is the Kyushu Wind Orchestra, and that was Yuki
Mhm.
Ito playing the cello. Why did you choose them? It sounds amazing. Clearly, they are
Yeah.
at the top of their game. Why did you choose them? What do you look for in a musician?
I didn't choose them actually. I've been the chief conductor of the Kyushu Wind Orchestra for 11 years now. And 3 years ago, Yuki was invited through the management to play Casanova again. That's how we met, and it was instant. We had a click right away, as well as his wife Megumi Nakamura, who is also the soloist on the CD. And we've been giving 7 or 8 concerts since then, and they are just terrific. They're great friends, fantastic musicians, and we see some images now of the last concert we had was exactly a month ago in Tokyo. We did the orchestral version of Casanova with the Tokyo Philharmonic, with Yuki, of course, as the soloist, and Megumi played an arrangement of myself from Debussy, the Danse Sacrée et Danse Profane, which is originally for string orchestra, but I made it for a small chamber orchestra with a few winds and the celesta and very little percussion. And that went very, very well. They also played a duet as an encore before the intermission, the Clair de Lune, which is also on the CD, arranged for harp and cello solo and small orchestra.
And what is it that you like about a certain musician, Johan? You told us you started music there with the military band,
Mhm.
then you went to the police band. Is there something you admire in a musician? What's really good performance to you or musicianship?
Of course, the ability of the player, but most of all the passion and the yeah the we're making music as friends. You can see that in the pictures. We trust each other so much, and it really brings the performance to a higher level. You get in a certain groove, and yeah, and especially with those guys, they are phenomenal. And I've worked with many other soloists, of course, on trombone or saxophone or cello, and it's yeah, passion is the biggest word I would say. Passion in playing and being super reliable, as a player.
Well, I believe we can hear that very, very well in this new recording. Let's have a listen to the next track. This is Angelo del Cielo. Oh, lovely. I'm sorry that we don't have enough time to listen to the whole
Yes.
thing. Of course, I'll show participants how they can listen to the entire album afterwards and purchase the album. This brings us to our philosophical part of the conversation, classical prestige and stringed instruments. Johan, in a previous interview, you detail your first encounter with music. Quote, "My first musical experiences were an open-air concert by a brass band from New Zealand when I was about 9 years old. My mother took me there. It was in a park in the small village where she was born and raised, and I was blown away by the sound, not knowing that I would become a brass player myself, all my life, end quote. Casanova is an unusual album, not because it features your complete works for cello, but because the cello is accompanied by wind orchestra. Wind orchestras are closely associated with outdoor performances of military music or police music, not the soft, intimate salon atmosphere of a string orchestra. For instance, whereas wind instruments are allowed indoors to punctuate a symphony performance, stringed instruments are not allowed outdoors, as was made clear by the uproar over the Paris Olympic Games Symphony Orchestra outdoor performance in the rain. Some commentators even called it a quote-unquote massacre. Through the title Casanova, you imply that listeners should get ready for something private and intimate. Is the wind orchestra the wrong choice to accompany the solo cello?
I don't think so. I mean, if you listen to the Anjou de Cello, that's a wind orchestra behind it. Can you believe it? It just sounds like an orchestra. Of course, it's an arrangement from Puccini's opera Suor Angelica. You know, the actual title is Senza Mamma, the aria. But no, I have always believed in the wind orchestra to be fully comparable to an orchestra. I mean, an orchestra has, of course, a beautiful string section to its possession. And first, the wind orchestra just winds and brass and percussion. But if you write well for them, you know, if your instrumentation is good, then you can make it as transparent as an orchestra. And that's what you heard in Casanova. That was the wind version, not the symphonic version. It was recorded in Tokyo, but I haven't heard it yet. But anyway, my love for the cello and the English horn are my favorite instrument, not a brass instrument. And for Casanova, I had two reasons to write it. One was to write a solo piece for cello, and this was 1998, long before I met Yuki and all that. And the second one was I wanted to write something in style of Giacomo Puccini, which is one of my favorite composers. So those two combined became Casanova. There's a lot of Puccini. If you look very closely, it starts with three chords, and those are exactly the same chords as the opening for Tosca, but in minor. And there's some more hints here and there. What you just hear, in The Escape, that comes from La Finciulla de West, the girl from the Golden West. So I stole left and right from Giacomo, and I don't think he cares. He's hopefully proud that I use him as an example. But I always wondered why Puccini hasn't chosen Casanova as a subject to one of his operas, because it has all the ingredients for a fantastic opera. You know, there's love, hate, drama, fights, escapes, you name it. You know, well, too bad he didn't. So it's sort of my piece is sort of like a mini opera with the cello as the hero tenor soloist.
And one question, just turning back again to the wind band question. I imagine you and your colleagues in the police band performed sometimes at the Concertgebouw in Amsterdam, and I have trouble believing that a lot of members of the orchestra of the Concertgebouw would come to the performances, whereas vice versa. Surely you from the police band went to the Concertgebouw orchestra performances. Well, why is that? Did you ever talk about such a phenomenon?
Well, you know, all my life I've have to deal with this fact that orchestras or symphony orchestras or conductors look down on the wind band. You know, the band. I never say band because that makes the association with marching bands, you know, and German Bierkapelle, and that's fine. You know, they exist and they have a lot of fun. But the wind orchestra is something completely different. You know, they sit on the podium not in a loud costume, but they make beautiful music. They play even transcriptions of the Rite of Spring, you know, or the Pina di Roma and all that. But nowadays, the wind orchestra is getting more and more prestige. More and more composers start to write very good original music for the wind orchestra. When I wrote The Lord of the Rings in the 80s, between 84 and 88, there were not many symphonies for wind orchestra. And right now, there are hundreds. So I'm sure I set a trend by showing composers and orchestras and conductors that you can certainly play a 45-minute piece, you know, That's not unusual. I mean, look at the symphony world. That's where the example came from. Funny enough, a lot of people told me when I told them I was writing a 45-minute symphony, they said, well, sorry, dude, but nobody's going to play that. That's too long. So, well, my standard answer was, well, I know pieces of 4 minutes that I think are too long, but and it turned out it was right. Now there are even longer symphonies. That the friend of mine, Thomas Strassel, has 5 symphonies now, and 3 of them are longer than 1 hour, and they're not too long. They're fantastic.
Thank you so much for talking to us about that important issue that many of us have are a little bit don't know so much about. So let's listen now to Claire de Lune. And while we're listening, please prepare if you have any comments, any questions you'd like to ask. Here's Claire de Lune.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I'm sorry that we can't listen to the whole thing, but you'll be able to listen to it if you afterwards when we take a look at how to listen to the album and buy it. So are there any other questions? Are there questions or comments anyone would like to make? So, oh, hi, Dr.
There
Davis.
you go. I'm unmuted now. Never heard of you, about you, or I'm really very, very impressed. And I've been listening to classical music, I hate to tell you this, for about 91 years.
Oh my God.
That's
Fantastic.
exactly what I say.
Whoa. Well, thank you, sir. That's a nice compliment.
But that was really very, very impressive. I will definitely, when my wife comes home, she knows how to use this computer better than I do. We're going to order your disc.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, Sam, for
Thanks,
bringing this gentleman.
Thank you, Dr. Davis. So last question then, Johan. What do you wish all of us who listen to this album?
I just got the chills again when I heard Angelo da Cello, I get those goosebumps. So I hope the listeners will get that with every piece, and I think they will, because the whole CD is absolutely fabulous. So yeah, I'm very proud of it.
Well, I certainly have to echo that I have goosebumps too. So thank you very much. Let's see how we can stay in touch with, well, you can buy the album first. It's on Navona Records, and that's Navona Records.com. All you do is you go over, once you go to NavonaRecords.com, you just go in and you put in Johan de Meij, you click there, and then you can see his biography, and then you can buy Casanova just going there. As you can see there, you can listen to it, you can buy it on Amazon, all of the above. You can order the CD. So that's again NavonaRecords.com, and just put in the search Johan de Meij. And if we want to stay in touch with Johan, then we simply go to johandemeij.com. We can find about his upcoming concerts. I hear he's coming to Massachusetts soon. I'll be sure to be there. Johan, if people would like to get in touch with you, can they reach out to you through this website?
Yeah, there's a contact form. There it is, right on the corner. They fill in their email and the question, and then it comes to my inbox, and I answer everybody.
Perfect. So
the same day. Yeah.
Perfect. So I just put that in the chat room. So johandemeij.com. Please feel free to reach out to him through the contact form with any questions you have or comments. He looks forward to hearing from you. Thank you so very much to Johan de Meij.
Thank you, Simon. Thank you for having me. It was wonderful.
So let's see what's coming up on Vienna Live. All you have to do is go to simeonmore.com to find out about all upcoming shows. And while you're at it, you can put in your email and click yes, I want email updates from Vienna Live. You'll get my Friday newsletter, which says, thank goodness it's Friday, and tells you all about the show of the last week and the show of the upcoming week. And this upcoming week, we have Tessa Suter, the Erik Satie Project. Widely acclaimed vocalist and lyricist Tessa Suter approaches the work of Erik Satie with jazz-inspired eloquence on Shadows and Silence, the Erik Satie Project. The album will be released via Noarana Music on June 27th and features pianist Luis Perdomo, bassist Yasushi Nakamura, drummer Billy Drummond, trumpeter Nadia Norhaus, and saxophonist Steve Wilson. Let's get to know Erik Satie's music for the 21st century. Again, that's next Wednesday. Tessa Suter, the Erik Satie Project, and all information is available at www.simeonmore.com. Once again, thank you so very much to Johan de Meij. Thank you to Vienna Live sponsors Victoria and Frederick Mulligan. Thank you to Abby Moser Agnieszka and Ben-Marie Volet and Mary Schlesinger for their support of this show. Thanks to my cousin Mike, a marketer from Layer App. If you're an architect or an engineer, they have a really cool tool you should check out. Thanks, of course, most of all, to you, our participants, who make it all worthwhile. From Saratoga Springs, New York, and New York City, New York, goodbye, and see you next Wednesday.